how to give presentations.
That's right, that's right.
So you were locked and loaded.
So how many of you are here tonight because you were told, there's a rumor that I'm a great singer?
Yes.
Good. No, I'll try not to disappoint you tonight. So you saw my LinkedIn profile, right? I'm just curious, how many of you have ever had to give a presentation where you got a little agita, didn't feel good about it, or you're up the night before, and it's kind of normal. We all kind of go through that. And the truth is, if you don't experience some of that, something's not right. Because you've probably seen overconfident presenters too that come in, and let's just call it what it is. They really screwed up. So my goal tonight is to give you three things. One, how to really build a presentation based off of creating compelling story. Because as you know, great presenters really are good storytellers. And the second thing is, how do you show up like a winner at every presentation that you deliver? Because you can have the best content in the world, but if you're showing up not looking or feeling like a winner, something's going on for people like, I'm experiencing a disconnect right now. And the way the brain works is if there's that disconnect going on, there's not like a sync going on between you and them, and they're not going to believe you. And the third thing is, how do you engage and energize your audience, your customers, or whoever? So those three things. And within that framework, I'm going to give you some tips, some nuggets, some things, some takeaways. We're going to leave some time afterwards for just informal Q&A. And I'd like to just ask if you know what this number means right up here, 14%. When you see that number, what does that mean for you, 14%?
More than 13%, less than 15%.
There you go. That works.
Maybe the amount people retain, or how often.
Okay,
they listen.
there you go. Let me tell you where this number came from. So I do a 2-day program for Cisco globally for the last 12 years. I've done this similar 2-day program for them all over. And Cisco asked us once to survey some of their pre-participants, some of our other customers, and 14% are the number of presentations that actually end up driving a customer action, which means the other 86% are just nice presentations. There's no next step. There's no what do we do next. There's no where do we go from here. Yet people walk out thinking, oh yeah, check off the box. I did what I was supposed to do. But at the end of the day, every presentation should have a next step, something where there's some agreed upon action. So don't you think 14% is pretty low? It's pretty bad. Yeah, so my goal for you tonight is to never have you be in that 86%. You're always going to be at least in that 14. And there's a couple of things that are important here. One is, showing up like a winner. What does it mean to show up like a winner? How often do you see people, they come up to the front of a room, whether it's 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, and you could tell they haven't done any mental preparation. There's no getting ready for the game, kind of getting their game face on. If you look at athletes, if you look at actors, if you look at people that clearly have their mental game, it's a really big part of their ritual in terms of like getting ready for payday. If you have to fly somewhere, you give a big meeting, and you're totally focused on your deck or like what are they going to say or think, and there's no room for mental prep, you're not giving yourself the edge that you need. Mental prep is so important. Even as many years as I've done this, even tonight before I came here, because I'm a fairly regular meditator, I took some time this evening. I kind of got my center in order, and I visualized that we're going to have fun tonight. We're going to connect. We're going to feel like one. And if I don't do that all the time, it doesn't happen. So one of the things I'm encouraged to do is to be very intentional about it. Very intentional all the time. I'm going to give you some ways to do that also. In terms of creating a compelling story, I'm going to walk through with you a system that works all the time to build a story. And the third thing is some simple ways to engage and energize the customer. And guess what? If you do those 3 things, you know what happens? Number 4, all the time. Get the customer to take action. Now, 95% of presentations typically are boring. How many of you have been to presentations where you're one of the people sitting in the crowd like that. And you're like, why am I here? Why am I being punished to be here? And I hate to say it, it happens at the C-suite. I see it in companies a lot too. One of the things I've always been grateful for in the work I've done with Cisco, whether it was John Chambers or the CEO after him, I mean, they worship them there because they walk their talk at the C-suite level. They really model the behaviors they want their people to model. And here's something else that happens. If you do virtual meetings, WebEx, Zoom, if you're on GoToMeeting, how often are you doing a demo for somebody? Because we coach people a lot in how to do virtual. And you say to them, Leon, so what did you think of that just now? And Leon says to me, Arthur, can you repeat the question? So if Leon asked me to repeat the question, what happened? He wasn't listening. He was doing this or whatever it might be. So a couple of rules on virtual meetings. I always make sure everybody has their cameras on. Always. Because I want to look at them in the camera. I want them to know I'm looking at them and that they're looking at me. Because when you play at that level virtual, you're going to have engagement with people. So something else that's important here is levels of presentation that people make. What's like a bad presentation? What do people do or say or don't say that make it sort of down this way? Low energy, so their energy's low. What else?
They just read their slides.
Yeah, they're. By the way, the only reason I have these is for you guys. I really don't need them, but I wanted something for you guys. So the truth is, people get all sucked into their content. And they think if they would just do this, that everything will be fine. And so when that happens, there's a complete disconnect. You're just staring at my butt. And look, I'm not that sexy, I hate to tell you. So it's important that all this is, the presentation's not about the content. It's about how you dance with people, how you connect with people, how you play with people. When they see you being authentic and fun, they're going to let down a little bit their defenses, and it's going to be more of a real connected type of a conversation. Most people are satisfied to make average presentations. They just want to check off the box. Okay, done, did it, get to tell the boss, flew out to Boston, did a presentation, check the box off. You know, if you're going that far, wherever you're going, right, you want to be able to rock the house everywhere you go. So tonight, we're only going to talk about outstanding presentations. And moving forward, you're only going to be making outstanding presentations. I'm going to do my best to give you 2 days here in 30, 40 minutes. So it'll be a little bit like drinking through a fire hose. A couple other things that are key here is your outcome. Most people, when they're planning their presentation, they're not starting with an outcome. So you guys, all Uber, I'm sure everybody here uses Uber, right? Not just me, right? Yeah. So when you take out your phone and you call an Uber, what's the app do?
Ask for destination.
Where you want to go, right? You plug in where you want to go. And in like cities like New York or Boston, you better be on the first floor, because if you do it from way up above, it screws them all up. So you better be like right there. And then it finds you. So with an outcome, first thing's really important is make sure you're really clear on what your outcome is, because the Uber driver will find you. There's two really important things with outcome. One is big picture. What's the big picture? And the second part of an outcome is the tactical side of outcome. And that's what are the steps that we need to get to the big picture. So the Uber driver knows where to turn because he's kind of following the software, right? Whether he's using Waze or whatever they use to get from point A to point B to get you to where you are. A lot of times when we do presentations, and maybe some of you might be guilty of this because I know I've done it, you're in a rush, you go in the car, you have the deck on your computer and you're thinking, okay, let's see, I haven't looked at this in a while, what's going to be happening here today? So you want to make sure there's a lot of clarity around outcome. Now I know tonight there's a lot of you hear from MindTouch and maybe similar in the industry, and I know that one of the big things in your industry is self-service model, right? Isn't that kind of a big part of it? So I would imagine when companies are looking at your services in your industry, they want to know from an outcome, are you going to improve our self-service model? Are you going to decrease the amount of time that our people are spending on tier 2 support or tier 3 support, whatever it might be. So they're looking for like an outcome, and you want to have that be totally clear for yourself, because the outcome drives everything. And literally note it as before you walk in there, note it as how you articulate it to the customer, because then at least you're going to have their attention. Another part of this is once you have this outcome, I'm going to give you a model now, and this is our fire up model. So it's a ladder, right? If you look at it, it's a ladder. And why do we use ladders? To get somewhere, right? Because there's something on the top that we're going for when we're trying to reach the top of a ladder. And we get it, and then we walk down. But have you ever been on a ladder that's not real stable? So this ladder is stable because if you have your mental game in place and you show up like a winner, then things are going to be solid. And that's why that's really important. And then what's also important on here is the steps. This fire up acronym that I'm going to walk through with you. The first one is F. You have to F your audience. You have to F your audience.
Yeah.
It's a joke, okay. I got your attention. You have to focus your audience. I got your attention. I had you focus. Well, this guy's, I don't know where your mind went, but look, you have to focus your audience. How many times do you see people, they come up to the front of a room, right? They go right into their presentation. People are texting. People are on their computers. People are everywhere but where? And then you expect them to do $1 million deal with you at the end of the evening, when you can't even get them to focus on you in the first 10 to 15 seconds. So you've got to focus your audience. Some ways to do that work well for me. I always like to get to any presentation I go to early. I like to meet people. I like to talk to people. Here's Leon and Shirley. I've known them for years from other programs I used to do. We got reconnected. I met a number of people from Mind Touch, just talking. Let's see, where's my scuba diver friend? Yeah, there you go, right? Scuba diving, right? So we got to visit about Thailand and scuba diving. So the more you can connect with people and demonstrate to people, hey, I'm a real person, you know? I'm not like a presenter. I'm actually a human being. I breathe, I have a life, I have interests. It's so much easier to create advocacy when you take the time to do that. And another easy way to get people to focus is just to show hands. Hey, now for me, I said, how many of you are here to hear me sing? I could say, how many are here tonight because you want to be better presenters, whatever it might be. Anything to get people engaged to participate, where it becomes less of a presentation and more of a conversation. So I want you to kind of get beyond the paradigm of presentation where it's two-way dialogue. You're talking to people. You're not, I got to get through this content. It's all about the content. It's really more about how you're connecting with them, making sure that you're in tune with them. The second one is inform them of the outcome. So once you do focus them on something, you want to inform them of the outcome. So part of why we're here tonight is we want to help you to build better ROI on your metrics around how you utilize customer service. And our goal tonight is to help you be introduced to a new model that's going to build an ROI for you that you never dreamed of. Now, I'm just making this up, but I'm sure if I spent a little time, I could come up with something that's a little more compelling, real. But you want to inform them of their outcomes so they know why they're here. They know the purpose why they're there. And then the third thing you want to do is you want to remind them of their pain. There's obviously a reason why they're there to listen to you. Something's not working for them. And it's amazing how often I see, and I see it a lot in the software industry still, where people default to feature benefit dump. They go right into bells and whistles. And the truth is people do not do business with you because of bells and whistles. They do business with you because you're going to fix something for them. And I know it sounds simplistic, but you got to remind them of it. So when we spoke last, one of your concerns were that you can't scale your business right now because you can't hire people quick enough. You can't dump PDFs on your server fast enough to deal with all your customer service issues. Is that still an issue for you? So whatever that means, you got to remind them of that pain. You got to just prod a little bit there. The next one is to educate, empower, and entertain. And that's where you get to have some fun with people. And I'll talk about some ways to do that when we say educate, you always want to, God bless you, we always want to educate on typically 3 things. Always a rule of 3. Anything you're doing, don't overwhelm people with more than 3 things. And so we talk about educate and empower and entertain. When you're educating people at a presentation, it always needs to come back to whatever the outcome is they want. So any type of education needs to point back to the outcome. And I'll give you some tips on how to entertain them, also how to empower them. And then you want to use their pain to demo. So if you know what their pain is and they're in alignment with you on it, I know just from speaking with some of you tonight that you probably can take them and let them try your software application out. Anything to get as much involvement on their part as you can, where it's not you doing just the Prezo show. That they really kind of have their hands on the dashboard. Anything where they're totally participating, involved, participating, empowering them. And sometimes it's easy to default to just like the spray and tell, show and tell. And you really want to get them as plugged in, asking questions, even though you might know the answer to some of those questions, really let them feel empowered that they're kind of answering those questions. And then the last step in this model is to propose a commitment. By the way, this is the 86% I'm talking about here, where people, they end a meeting, whether it's an online meeting or a live meeting, and there's no next step. I mean, it just blows my mind that all the work, all the endeavor, and then it's like, now what? So there's a specific way that we suggest that you propose that next step. And it goes something like this. So based on what we covered so far, does anybody have any questions? Now, I'm just sort of role-playing this a little bit, assuming that we just had a full meeting. And then where you go from there is, based on what we've discussed so far, have I addressed some of the needs that you had shared with me in previous meetings that you said you had? So all we're doing is consensus building at this point in time. So you could see how, and I'm going to fill in the blanks, you could see how, and this is where you building that outcome, big picture, whatever the big picture is that they want. In this case, it might be, I know, and I'll use your company as a model because I need to work with one of Cisco's companies, and you have a really good case study in there about how you were able to increase, let's see, who knows the Cisco?
Cisco Meraki.
Meraki, the case study. You increased 2 things.
Ticket deflection.
Ticket deflection, very easy metric, and the next one was?
Website traffic.
Right, because they weren't plowing through PDFs, right? You actually were able to optimize it. Over 1,031, I think, actual live web pages of searchable stuff, right? Is that fairly accurate? And there were 2 things that you decreased, or that went down for them. So there's 4 things total.
Escalations one of them?
So escalations went down, right? Which meant less tier 2, less tier 1 and 2 sort of customer events. And what was the other one?
Mean time to resolution?
What's that?
Mean time to resolution?
Yes. Now, guess what? I knew those, but I could have just like vomited them out, right? See the difference when you empower people and you just put it out there? So that's the type of thing you want to do, is to engage people and don't you guys feel better that it's like you got to play and participate? I could have just said, yeah, right, right? Absolutely, yeah, it feels a lot better, you bet. So, I mean, I encourage you anytime you can, let them play, let them participate in that. And we'll talk about energize and entertain in a moment. So first what we talked about is focus, right? Yeah. And then remind them of their pain. So really important. So if you don't remind them of their pain, no PO. No pain, no PO. That's the way I always look at it. And then another thing that's really important is when you educate around any 3 sexy concepts. In other words, anything that will point back to the outcome. And I say the rule of 3, it could be anything, but 3 things that are going to really kind of point back to whatever that outcome is. And there's some ways I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So it's really not about the content. And then the mental game part's really important. When we prepare for presentations, a lot of times what happens in the brain is this. Can anybody relate to any of that? I suck at this. I'm going to blow this. I'm going to lose my job. We go to like the darkest cavern in our brain. And most of the time that doesn't happen, right? So there are ways to hack this thing, because what you want to start doing is looking at the brain as it's a piece of hardware. That's what it is. The brain's a piece of hardware, really. And the software are your thoughts and your feelings. So here's the good news. The hardware, at least maybe not in my life, well, I don't know. There's a lot going on these days with the brain. But there's only so much altering we could do with the brain, but we could do a lot with the software. We have the ability to change our thoughts and our feelings about these things. And so there's a couple of ways to do that. How about this? I create a series of connected conversations. I'm going to knock it out of the park. Now, some people, when they go through this, there's a part of them that's like, I don't know about that. You want to basically replay, all you're doing is you're replacing the software. You just reprogram the software. And what's amazing about this is I have a certification, something called conversational intelligence. It's all neuro-based coaching, and it's all about the brain, and it's fascinating stuff. And believe it or not, there are just parts in the brain. There's 5 brains. One of them stores memory, another is process. I mean, when you break it down, and we actually have the ability to actually just change the way we feel about things. Totally change the way we feel. But it's something you have to consciously do. And I'll give you some ideas on how to do that. But how would you feel if you were actually intentionally seeing and feeling it differently? Who's ever done this before, where you've actually... Good. Tell me about that, Leon, and then Ari, and yeah.
I changed in giving a presentation on ocean water, cleaning ocean water. An hour before, I said, I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I went into it saying, because I hadn't prepared, but I had my 5 or 6 slides, and I just said, okay, be positive because you're going for broke anyway, so what do you have to lose?
Total reframe,
Yeah,
just the way you
just
reframe.
reframe.
And so what happens, your physiology changed when you chose to reframe the way you felt about it.
Yeah.
Good. Who else? I saw Ari. You also shifted the way you.
Yeah, before I came in here tonight, I was laying on my deathbed and said, this is the last place that I want to go right now, even though all these awesome people are going to be there. I'm grumpy, I'm tired, and I thought about, wait, there's all these awesome people there. Arthur's going to give a great presentation. I'm feeling like it's the end of the world, but that's just me reinforcing how I feel. And it's as simple as getting out of bed, taking a shower, and showing up and doing my thing.
And even though you probably don't feel great, probably.
No, but it's like, this is nothing compared to my head, how it felt laying still in my bed, and what I was assuming I was going to be like here.
So I have to confess, I've been feeling like Ari for the last 3 days, but I refuse to have that be part of my whatever. All the head trash, it's like goes, you just have to move through it, right? And you guys deliver presentations all over the place. There are times you get at an airport somewhere, you feel like crap, and it's like, I got to deliver.
Yes, Sarah.
Right? I got to make this happen.
I have a
So,
question.
yes,
The statements that you showed, the positive ones.
yes.
If you say those things to yourself, and even if you don't necessarily believe them as you're saying them, is it still effective to say them?
So here's what happens.
Another voice at the same time that knows.
So I'm giving you a high level of this right now, but there are ways that typically when I work with people, we work with your physiology. So it's combining the physiology with what you're saying so that the physiology becomes very connected to the words. So it's not just the words, it could be, you might be jumping up and down. We have things like, yes, all kinds of things to do to really get your body language in there with it too.
You should practice one of those.
Yeah. So I'll
I'm a little tucked in here. Next
Just
time.
give me a, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
there you go. A little more feelings, just a little more, just a little more. A little more.
a little stronger.
Yes, there we go. Okay. But that says, yeah, there you go. Hey, I was working with someone I won't mention the company, but it's a big company here in town. His CEO called him out a couple of months ago. He said, hey, we need you to be the MC at our customer experience event because nobody else in the company will do it. This guy called me. He was literally like shaking in his boots because he didn't want to blow it. And I got together with him. We did 3 one-hour sessions. He knocked it out of the park. But a lot of it had to do with because he had to believe that he was capable of doing it. So much of it's about like believing that you're capable of doing it, right? Because that's like the big battle right there. Now, to feel like a winner, this is a little sample here, a little superpower pose. So when you asked about that, there's all kinds of things you can do to physically hack yourself to get prepped up for something. That's just one example. I could give you 10 examples of things where you move beyond what's going on in here and you let your physiology take over. I don't want to date myself, but it was probably about 25, 30 years ago when Tony Robbins was first doing the Firewalk many years ago. And so a friend of mine was running his company, so I got in for free and I did the Firewalk. And what was interesting about the Firewalk back then, anyone ever do it before? So you're basically walking about 50 yards down a little field and the coals are like 2,000 degrees and they're real coals. And what Tony did, he worked with your physiology, and he said, look, when you walk across the coals, just don't look down. And he said, just walk across and say, cool moss, cool moss, cool moss. And I'm like, this is either the stupidest thing in the world I'm going to do here or it's going to change my life. Well, good news was I did it. I didn't get burned. It didn't change my life. But at least, it's like, wow, there's something to this, Another time, I'm a scuba diver, and I did a shark dive. They were black tip reef sharks. They're not like great whites or anything, but they were still like 12, 14 feet long, and they're swarming. They're all in a circle, and I was the first diver to jump into them. And the guy said, don't worry, they've been fed. I'm thinking, okay, that's great, good to know. But like that first moment when you're in there and all of a sudden you're like swarmed by like these big sharks, and they say, just don't touch them, it's their domain. I was thinking, this is insane. But after about a second or two, I was like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. I mean, this is like really amazing. So our brains do all kinds of funny stuff, and a lot of it's just up here. It's in the head. So energizing your customers. There's a couple of ways to do that. One, to energize, to make sure things are entertaining, you have to be entertaining. And there are some things that, to be entertaining, that is not about your words. So many trainings focus on words. It's like 3%. The other 90% is physiology, and it's modality, and it's your voice, it's inflection. And so that's really how you engage people, is how well you're really connecting and using your voice with people, and your body language is what people measure you up on. Yet we don't spend a lot of time on that. We're too focused on the deck and the content. And if you're involved with that, they're checking you out. They're measuring you up to see kind of where you're at with that. Charisma is another thing. People think, to be charismatic, you have to be whoever, right? Well, there's 3 things we know about charisma. It's presence. It's just being present with people. So you're actually listening. You're not talking down to people. You're kind of right at eye level. And there's nothing wrong with having personal power. You don't abuse it, but that people at least have the confidence that you can deliver. And the third one is warmth. My gosh, I've seen some speakers with good content. They blow it because they just don't know how to be warm to people. I just call it the likability factor. Just don't be a different person. Like some of you talked with me before I got up here, right? Am I a different person up here than we were talking? The same, right? I mean, because you want to just be the same as you are. You don't put on your presentation hat. Okay, game face on now. And people look at you and it's like, that's not the same person I was talking. And then there's a disconnect. Some other key things. We don't need this. I'll just put this here. Is how you move. So, for example, when people talk in front of a group, they don't look at people. We have something we call connected conversations. And if you can master this, it's going to totally put you at ease. And how it works, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. I'm going to talk to Shirley here for about 3 seconds. Now, I'm not ignoring everybody else, Shirley, but I just want to make sure you feel like there's a connection. And then I'm going to slowly move over here, and I'm going to kind of connect with Valerie. And I might be talking to everybody, but I'm going to be looking right at Valerie. Kind of feel like we're connected right now? Now, when I do this, it's got to be very varied. So I don't go, first there's Ari, and then there's Shirley, and then there's Leon. I don't want to miss Valerie because that's just, you have to use a certain amount of feeling natural when you're just kind of moving with the purpose. And when you move with the purpose, what happens is your eyes are what pull you through the group. So if I come over here and we're having a conversation for 3 seconds, what moves me next is my face this goes first, and then I start moving. So if everything starts right from here, and I just take a couple of steps, and then I connect over here, and I don't worry about what am I doing with all this stuff. I'm not thinking about this or that, or what do I do with the clicker, because you're focused more on people. So I just kind of look over here, I take a step, I lean into it. And when I say lean into it, that's another important thing about physiology. How many times have you seen people, they're kind of like, they're back like this, and they're with the clicker, or they're back here, and they're kind of doing one of these, or it doesn't feel right. So it's important that you're really grounded on your feet. Really, really solid, really grounded. In fact, I'm going to have everybody stand up. I'll show you exactly what I mean by this. So years ago, when I was studying martial arts, we used to do something in martial arts where you'd have to really knock somebody off their feet. And it's really easy to do if people aren't grounded. But if, Leon, I'm going to have you come up here. I'm going to just demonstrate this. So, Leon, if you go ahead and just push my shoulders right now. I'm obviously not really grounded, right? Now, go ahead and try it now, okay? So it's a little harder because I'm grounded. So you want to make sure that you have a root, is what we used to call it in martial arts. And you all could sit down now. But just that feeling of a root. Yeah, push her, would you? Yeah, so you feel that root, because when you have that root, when you're moving, what happens is from a psychological place, that root starts from the ground, your confidence level is going to be higher because you're grounded. So it's important when you move and then stop and start talking. Now, some people they're pacers. They're kind of all over the place. They're kind of back and forth. That drive me crazy. Drive you crazy? If people are doing, some people do it. So move with a purpose. Know your space here. So for example, if I'm here and I'm kind of, I call it the downhill ski. Any skiers here? This is downhill ski, the right foot. So this is my downhill ski. I take a move here. I take 1 or 2 steps. This is my downhill ski here now, and I'm focused over here. So you just want to have a certain amount of sort of stability to how you are. Otherwise, if your body's not in sync, it's going to be awkward. Does that make sense?
Downhill ski.
Downhill ski. Or if you're a snowboarder, would it be the same thing, downhill ski or downhill knee, or I don't know.
Yeah, you pivot the hips.
Yeah, or at the hips, right?
Pizza, French fry. Pizza, French fry. Pizza, French fry.
You're a snowboarder, right? So I wanted to, has this been valuable for you guys so far? Yeah. Good. So Ari's going to have this tape. My good friend Wayne, who's my personal videographer for 30 years. We were just actually personal friends, but he's a phenomenal videographer. We're going to give this to Ari, and so you guys could refresh this, from time to time. I wanted to tell you guys a little story because I think it's important, because I want to open it up for Q&A in a moment, of the importance of whenever type of a presentation you're giving or making, kind of what your mindset is. And this whole thing about showing up like a winner. So it's interesting because Wayne and I, we were talking about this on the way over here. This is back in 2001. Wayne was kind enough to, I'm a kayaker, and he came out with me back in 2001. They have in San Diego here, they call it the Bay to Bay race. They have a 5-mile and a 20-mile. I don't know if anybody's kayakers, but they're kind of fun. I used to do it recreationally for fun a number of years, and one year, back in 2001, I actually decided to get serious about it. And these things are different than like 10Ks, because with the 10K, they put men with men, women with women, age groups. They have enough runners for that. But with kayaks, they have a couple of hundred boats in the water, they just try to match you up to the same boats. And you could be racing against somebody half your age, but if they have the same boat as you do, that's just the category that you're in. So this was back in 2001. It was Shelter Island. I brought my boat out, and it's a little more serious that day, you know, other years. It was a beautiful morning. I mean, it's just, if you've ever been out there early in the morning on a weekend, it's just glassy and it's magical. The gun goes off. I was in the 5-mile race. It was just different than the 20-mile. The 5 miles was more like a sprint. 20 miles more like a marathon, a little more paced. And literally, we're all just jammed up. And then there's about 6 or 7 people that literally just took off. They were ahead of the pack. I was kind of jammed in the middle pack. And eventually, I loosened up from some of the people in the middle pack and started pacing different people there and started picking off one person, picking off another person. And before I realized, it was like, my gosh, I'm in the middle of the bay here. It's like 2.5 miles out. And I could see within my eyesight the 4 or 5 paddlers that were still sort of within a rock's throw of where I was. And the weirdest thing happened. I started bawling like a little baby in the middle of the bay. People would have thought I was crazy, but I started crying. It's like overwhelmed with emotion and joy. I don't know where it came from. And after I got over that moment, I started paddling like a madman. Just like a madman. I picked off one guy. I picked off another guy. And Wayne will vouch for this because he videoed it. I picked off the last guy, probably about 100 yards before the shore. You know, for me back then, I was 45 years old back then. And it was a big deal because it was the first time in my life that I won like an event, an athletic event. And when you're at your midlife, I know now they say 40s is like the new 30s. Great, wait till you get there. So, it sounds great. Yeah, it's a nice cliche, but I got news for you. It's not all true. But for me, the big learning for me that day was I experienced a feeling I'd never experienced in my whole life before. What it was like to really play full out. I mean, I could have had a heart attack out there. It would have been a great way to go. Because I really experienced that feeling of not looking back. It was not an option to be coming second. That it was fully playing full out and fully committed. And so I want to encourage each of you in your presentations and everything you do in your life to play full out. Because it is a great feeling. We feel very alive when we're playing like that. So on that note, I want to open it up for some Q&A. And I'm going to...
I was in that kayak with you.
You were, man, huh?
I was like, go out there!
So I wanted to kind of make this more open forum for everybody. Just grab my water. And I want you to kind of ask the questions that you want to ask about, you know, best prezos you've done, worst, anything. One thing I didn't share was probably where I really picked up most of my really good skill at this was for about 18 months, I used to do a 4-hour seminar in 250 cities all over the United States. It was the same 4-hour seminar 5 days a week. And it was one of these deals where if I didn't sell people in the room, I didn't get to eat that day. So I really learned how to connect with people because I learned that when people have fun, they laugh, they take their wallets out. It's just this amazing little, when people are enjoying and they're having fun, they like you, they write checks and they pull their credit cards out. I don't think it's any different from anything we do. So who's got the first question? And I'm sorry, first name is?
Will.
Will, yeah.
When developing your story structure for your presentation, how do you hone in the timing on it? Because
So
you're probably going to be connecting with people.
yes. So on YouTube, a good video is no more than 2 to 2.5 minutes. If you watch good YouTube videos, right, anything over 2.5 minutes, you're like, I'm done, I'm toasted, right? So a good story is 2 to 2.5 minutes. Occasionally 3 if you're really good, but probably 2 to 2.5. You want to answer some simple questions. What's the outcome I'm going for here? Who was involved? Where was it? When did it happen? How can I put color into this? And color is your voice inflection, how your expressions. Did that help some?
Yes.
Okay. Who's got the next question? Yep.
Oftentimes when giving presentations, either with a large group of people or at an event, you find yourself in kind of a lineup of a lot of people speaking. And if you're towards the end of that lineup, people in the audience are going to be really tired by the time that you stand up to talk. And reviving that kind of conversation is a lot more difficult than when you walk into the room the first time.
Right.
What kind of strategies can people use to effectively navigate that?
So when I had a six-pack, I would just take my clothes off. But I don't do that anymore. So when you are towards the end, and I'm gonna just put my water down because this is really important. You got to get people on their feet, and you want to be unique and different. So, hey, look, I know you guys want to go to, there's food out there, there's nuts, candy, whatever. But before we do, I want to get everybody up on your feet here. Anything to get people to do something, to breathe, to get some physiology. You know, it always works. Okay, we're doing shoulder massages, but just be careful with that these days. Just really can make sure permission is, whatever you do, but something around getting them up to do something. Yeah.
Big breath in, breath out.
Do a big wave, whatever it might be. Yeah. Next question. Ari.
I've suffered this myself, and I've watched now, because I spend a lot of time at conferences. There's also the other end of the spectrum, which is feeling so confident, feeling so that I can command the room with whatever I'm talking about, that you really end up not talking anything about your slides or why the people are in the room in the first place. So how do you mesh confidence and the ability to control the room with your presence to delivering on an excellent presentation? How do you make sure that you don't fall out of?
So here's what works. When I go to conferences, for example, and I'm speaking, I like to survey a couple of people and say, I'll come up and I might say, so Ari, where are you from? What would you like to gain from this afternoon? Anything particular you'd like to gain?
Yeah, how to command a room.
Okay, good. We'll handle that. And I will go around the room and I'll survey 3 or 4 people. I'll make a note of who they are. And I will capture from them what they want. And sometime during the presentation, I'll say, I spoke with 3 or 4 of you. I spoke with Ari. I spoke with Shirley. I try to use her name. And some of the things that they said were important for them today was X, Y, and Z. Would that be important for anybody else here today? So it kind of holds you accountable, but it also holds you acutely aware, and they're thinking, wow, that dude really listened. What a concept, As opposed to, I got to get through this deck today. I got to get through the deck, huh?
It really lassos you to the...
Yeah, because they're owning you, So I'm a big believer in, I don't care what I came to present, I want to know what they want. And somehow, if those two aren't always in sync, you've got to do the tap dance and somehow make it work. That's why they pay the big bucks, man. You got to make it work. Yeah.
One day.
Hey, this is a true story because weird things can happen when you're out in the road. When I was doing this medical practice management seminar years ago, I owned my only, what's that really expensive Italian suit, an Armani. I thought, I'm going to buy one Armani in my life, right? I'd never do it again. Expensive suit, a thing that ripped right in the middle and the back when I'm doing this seminar. So all these little old Jewish ladies from Florida at this seminar, and I'm thinking, I don't have a pair of pants to change into. They're going to see this. So you know what I did? I just instead of hide the egg, I just said, ladies, sorry about this. There's nothing I can do about it. They got such a charge out of it, and that was it. Nobody cared. So we tend to somehow make things bigger. We make them bigger than other people make them, and when we attempt to make them bigger, it becomes bigger. So it's better just to show the egg and just move on from it. Okay? Who else? Next question? Yes.
Two-part question.
First is a comment, well, two parts. First is a comment and then a question.
Yes.
The comment is, I noticed that you don't use a lot of crutch words, you don't have a lot of ums, but, and, right, like no confirmation, like no pauses. You speak very well and present very well. How, did you in the past have a lot of crutch words?
So I know, at Toastmasters, if anyone's ever gone to Toastmasters, they spank you if you say or but, or you get fined. And I get it, because it's all about sort of platform type speaking. Here's how you avoid a crutch word. We think we have to fill every second, every nanosecond up with a word. We're always thinking of the next word. And what happens is we fill the words with but, you know what I mean, you know, all that stuff, right? Marcy, all that kind of stuff, right? So you want to allow time for space and processing. So what I do, I allow some processing time. Particularly in your business, when you are delivering something technical, you might have made that presentation 50 times. They're seeing it for the first time. Allow them to mentally process. Allow some space. That space for them is computer processing time. Because if you move through something quickly and they don't get it, they're not going to be the stupid one in the room. They're just going to sit there and, I'm the CTO in this room. I better know this stuff. They pay me the big bucks. And what happens is it almost makes them wrong. And the way they get even with you, they don't buy. So it's important to give people mental processing time. And one way to do it in your type of presentations is, before I move on to the next step, is everybody clear on what we just went through? There are no wrong questions in here. There's only smart questions. So you want to encourage people to do that. Otherwise, people just say, I don't think I got that. No one else is asking. And so what happens is people get disengaged. And you want to keep people engaged.
And that pause is beneficial to the audience for them to process, as well as you not filling that blank space
Yes.
with your crutch words.
Yes. So I would chat, instead of, so here's the hack. This is a mental hack. I'm not going to tell you, don't say but, don't say so, that's never going to work. I'd rather coach you on experience what it is to pause and just allow the golden moment of silence. You'll never have another issue with those pregnant pauses or the words that people get tripped up with. Who's next?
That corner.
Yes.
Well, I was just gonna comment on the question because I'm in client success and we do a lot of virtual presentations. And, we ask a question about what is your outcome, what is your business outcome that you're after, what are you trying to achieve? What are some of the 3 or 5 things that you are trying to complete in the next 3 months? And, that pause that you're talking about, that, we actually are coached to be, wait, count 15 seconds. It's okay, that pause, the silence, that, a lot of people are just kind of afraid of being silent.
Yes.
It's actually good because people are processing, right? The other part
They are.
on the call is thinking through those big picture conversations we're having with them.
And particularly on virtual meetings, very important. With virtual meetings, you've got to keep people engaged. And the way you do that is you keep going around the horn and asking questions so they know, I can't be looking at my Tinder account right now. I can't be doing this. That's not going to fly right now. This person's pretty sharp. So when I do virtual, there's a couple of things. And I've been training the Cisco people on virtual for years. And one of the things that we coach them on, because it's really funny at Cisco sometimes, they own WebEx, right? So we'll walk into the room sometimes behind the flip chart, and I'll do something like this and say, so how many of you do your virtual meetings like this? You guys own WebEx, don't you? And they're like, oh man, we should be turning those cameras on. It's their technology.
How many people can you, how many people can you accommodate with like all having webcams on? Where it's
Well, so I mean, I've used WebEx, GoToMeeting, Zoom. Depending on their licenses, you could have 10, 15 people on some of those meetings. Because the way it works too is whoever's speaking will pop up.
But then you can't engage if it's like 30, 40 people.
You can though. Here's how you do it. So here's the trick. Here's another nugget. Look, the way you have a connected conversation, 3 to 5 seconds in a virtual meeting, always look in the camera on your computer. So many times people are looking to the left or to the right. Always look in the camera, and they're always going to be thinking that they're looking right at you.
The big trick with that is like, I've noticed, everyone looks not at who they're talking to, but themselves.
Yeah, right.
Take your little thing, make it as small as you can, and put it right under your camera.
Yes,
Because you're going to be looking at yourself anyways, so
that's right.
yourself out under the camera.
That's a great piece of advice. So always look at that camera because they think they're looking right at me.
The best is when you catch them, and they're like, checking themselves out.
You know, the technology, as you guys know, it's amazing. I mean, I don't want to keep referencing Cisco, but I love when I work with them because they have like virtual presence, and I've worked with people like in 4 countries in front of 5 screens, and it's sort of like right out of Star Wars. You think they're right there. There's no degradation. And it's amazing when you get over the fact that this one's in Australia, this one's in Toronto, this one's here, and they're all right there. It's just amazing that there is no separation, physicalness, separation, because if you connect with them and you're in the moment with them, there's no distinction. You're right there. You don't allow the technology to be the barrier. Now, yes?
So this was more of a question on if you have done and if you haven't, I want to ask for your advice. But have you ever like emceed an event from start to finish? So you were the one hosting it, you were working with a lot of different speakers during that presentation portion, and you helped to like manage that and control that. Have you ever done that before?
Yes.
Okay. So from a strategy point of view, normally when someone's emceeing, there's a certain amount of time that you're given to have all the speakers be able to present. And ultimately, as an MC, you have a little bit of control or advice that can be given to those presenters on how to control that time. What has been some strategies you've implemented in the past that help manage
So one thing I've seen MCs do, which becomes a fatal mistake, is they try to own all of it. So you need a timekeeper. So you need designated people, and you make sure the speakers know. And this is how I've done it. I might say, Leon, we're excited to have you as a speaker today. You know, we want to make sure we get everybody in on time, out on time, keep the breaks going the way they're supposed to be. So you're with us, you're 20 minutes today, right? Is your presentation.
I was told 30.
So anyway, I mean, I'm going to make sure they all own 20 minutes because we want to make sure we don't want to have to embarrass anybody up there. You almost have to like just say, hey, don't take license up there. Because some people, they're on a roll, they're like, screw you, I'm going for it. Yeah. And I've seen it happen where people they just break the rules. And as an MC, you need to own it with them. And one way to do that is, here, come on up here, I'll show you one thing that works. So they're like still rambling, right? And they totally went in the left field. So here's what really works. Let's say you're the speaker on the MC. Your first name is?
Baron.
Baron. Wasn't Baron awesome? Baron was, give him a hand. Baron was awesome, wasn't he? Now, what am I doing?
Cutting them off.
I am. I'm smiling, right? I very gently, I'm not like, it's not like this. It's not like get off, you know. I'm very, just, this is my show, and so it happens.
Yeah,
it does. So you just need, and it's worth having a meeting with all the speakers before. Hey, look, just one agreement here, alignment that we're all going to stay within the 20. We're going to give you a red light, a yellow light, whatever you're using. Let you all know. Are we all in agreement, speakers, on that? Because that way, the rules are established.
Right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Does it work?
It does. Plot twist. I used to be an MC.
Any other questions? Yes.
So post-presentation, self self-reflection is kind of a good way to determine success, failure, things to improve.
Yes.
What are some of the things you look for when kind of looking back on your presentation, and what are some of the strategies you employ to figure out, did I do well, did I succeed, did I fail, where can I improve?
So I want to share with you a couple things not to do first. Because we're all our own worst critics, right? And I coach a lot of people in front of video cameras, and I always tell them first, what are 2 things you like you did, and 1 thing you changed? As opposed to what was it that really sucked that you get a lose sleep over. It's how you frame it with people. So there's always going to be 3 presentations you give, by the way. The one you planned on giving, right? Kind of prepared and planned on it. The one you gave, and the one you wished you gave. It's never going to change. So just accept that you're going to improve on the one you gave and look at what you could do in the future to make it even better. So here's an example. I never met Ari before. When we met at the Sales and Marketing Alliance, Leadership Alliance. He was astute enough to send an email out, which I thought was really quite courageous, and say, hey, I'd love some feedback. It's the first time in all my years I've ever seen anybody do that, which speaks volumes for Ari and his want to improve. And so my feedback was constructive. So for yourself, I would ask other people. Say, look, I'd love some, there's a shortage in this world of feedback, constructive feedback. And, go up to someone you trust and say, I'd like to become better at this. What are a couple of things you saw that you liked that I did? And I'd love some feedback on what I can do better next time. If you approach people like that, they'll really help out. And then the things that didn't go well, don't beat yourself up about them. I mean, it's just a moment is all it is. Just a moment. Does that help?
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Did we accomplish our mission tonight?
Mission accomplished.
Cool.
So what's our next steps?
So, our next steps are this. I think a couple of things. One, I left a couple of flyers and business cards here, some of the programs I do. We do these in-house for companies. We do some publicly. I'm going to hang out tonight and visit a little bit. I don't know if there's a little socializing. My next step with you is I'm here. Feel free to approach me. I like to think I'm approachable. And I love this venue up here. I could come up here every month and do a program. It's such a neat venue. Wayne and I were talking. We said, gosh, we were just born in the wrong era. We wish we could be wrong country. Yeah, right. This is so cool up here. We had cubicles in our day and age,
We do too.
You did. You do or did?
We just also have a playground.
Oh, that's good. You have to have both. Well, look, you guys have been awesome. I hope this was of value to you, and it's a pleasure. Feel like Tom Brokaw up here or something,
All right, so a couple housekeeping things before we all exit.
I love you, buddy.
Just feel close.